What's going on, everybody? It's Ricky with Video Homicide, and today we're going to be talking about a childhood favorite. No, this isn't an exploitation film. It's not made in Italy. It's not made in Asia or anything like that. This movie is an American film, and it is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was made in 1990, directed by Steve Barron, who also directed another one of my childhood favorites, which is Coneheads, and oddly enough, totally random, but he also directed the Michael Jackson Billie Jean music video, which is a pretty dope-ass music video, I gotta say. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, before I get into the movie in question, I just kind of want to talk about the impact that this movie had on me as a kid, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of people, because this movie came out, like I said, in 1990. I was born in 92. And even with me kind of like developing a bit of memory, from back then, Ninja Turtles was a big part of my childhood. Same with my cousin Chris, even my brother to a certain degree, but I can specifically remember all those Ninja Turtle action figures. I can remember the cartoon VHS tapes. I remember the cartoon being on TV vaguely, but I really remember those VHS tapes. I remember my mom, my grandma, they were avid. My mom still is an avid thrift shop goer. And I remember her just bringing home all these Ninja Turtle tapes, and I remember I would watch them. And I think I probably had about, I would say maybe no more than 10. And none of them were in order, so I was just kind of getting bits and pieces of the story, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until years later when I sat down and watched. I definitely watched the first season, because I think that's only about 6 episodes, maybe the second season as well. And it's so mind blowing to me that when I was a kid, Ninja Turtles, Batman, and video games were the biggest parts of my life, and in turn video game action figures, Batman action figures, Ninja Turtle action figures. And I remember we had this big Rubbermaid bucket, me and my cousin, because we lived in the same apartment building right across the hall from each other, so we were always hanging out. And I remember we would just get this bucket of action figures and just dump it, and all the weapons and little accessories would always be in the bottom, so it'd be a mission to find this particular gun or this particular sword or whatever it was. I remember there was one Ninja Turtle action figure where he was almost in like a flasher outfit, you know what I mean? Like a guy that go with a trench coat, and he had a mask with a mustache. And I remember always being obsessed with finding that little mask, and just the hours of entertainment that for me, when I remember playing with action figures growing up, I never really made them do stuff. I just remember setting them up and then admiring them, and then just kind of looking at them, and maybe it was never much of bashing them together that you might see in TV. It was always kind of the role play was happening within my mind, and they were kind of just a tool, part of the the experience. So it was always more about just thinking about stuff. So flash forward, we got the Ninja Turtles movie. And maybe before I get into that, I should kind of maybe explain for those of you who don't know what it's about, which would be crazy in my opinion. But the story of the Ninja Turtles is there's 4 turtles and there's a rat named Splinter. So the 4 turtles are basically raised by this rat, and he names them after some of his favorite Renaissance painters: Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello. And each 4 of these turtles have their own personality. So Leonardo is a very leader type. Donatello is a very scientific kind of guy. Michelangelo, he's just a party dude, and Raphael is just kind of a hard ass. And Splinter, basically has his own relationships with each of them, but he's the father figure, right? And he teaches them martial arts, because Splinter's backstory is he was once owned by this martial artist, and the martial artist was killed by this man that we'll get into later. And he used his skills that he learned from his master and taught the boys, and then they grew up, and they basically, as teenage boys get older, they want to go out and explore and experience things, and that's what's going on with these turtles. So the cartoon showed a bit of that, but the movie, let's get into it. Okay, so in 1990, this movie hits theaters, and it is a fucking box office smash. It makes so much goddamn money. Not that always matters, but this movie happens to be really good, and it made a lot of money. So it starts off with our chick, who's like a reporter named April O'Neil, and she's leaving her office and she's going through the alleys and she gets mugged by like Sam Rockwell of all people, and it's so iconic and such. I remember this movie so good because I remember the guy saying "bad time" and she's like, "You're telling me," you know what I mean? Because it's so New York. You know, this movie is so fucking New York. I've often said, you know, like my ideal, you know, version of New York is like 90s New York and 70s New York. Not that I want to be there and fucking, you know, I'd like to experience the stuff that I'm interested in, but I wouldn't want to experience the stuff that is like fucking tragic and horrific, you know what I mean? But so she gets mugged by Sam Rockwell and these gang of bastards, and at the same time the sewer kind of lifts up, and these Ninja Turtles who you don't see yet, they come up and they kick the shit out of all these bastards, or these bad guys rather, or maybe they are bastards. But anyways, the cops show up and they reveal that they've all been tied up with like TV cables and stuff like that, antennas, the whole 9 yards. And from there, we go into our opening credits where, boom, our heroes are revealed. And they're these turtles, and they're designed by Jim Henson, who, of course, did the Muppets, you know, so Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, all those types of people. This was actually the last feature that Jim Henson actually had a hand in before he passed away back in 1990, which is sad because Jim Henson, he's behind, you know, a whole other topic we could get into, which is the Muppets. Like, the Muppets Take Manhattan is, to me, is one of the best movies in the genre. If is it even a genre? You know, it's a musical. It's New York. It's greasy. It's a dirty diner. You know, it's all those things that I really associate with like New York cinema, if that makes sense. I'm sure someone knows what I'm talking about. And the animatronics on these turtles are so good. Like, bravo to the work behind these creations, because the expressions are there. You know, everything looks good. Nothing looks like a suit. I mean, it looks like a suit, but it doesn't look like a cheaply made suit. Like, this looks like, you know, money was spent, and money was definitely spent. So they did their job in terms of the look. So the turtles go back to their little hangout, which is in the sewers, and it's totally cool. You know what I mean? Like, they have like a TV, and they got like fucking posters on the wall, all kinds of stuff, and, you know, martial arts training center, that type of shit happening. Splinter's there, and, you know, you can tell that when they're out on their own, they're kind of party animals in a way. Just like some of them, especially Michelangelo. But when they're in the presence of Splinter, they're serious. You know what I mean? And they don't piss around, which I love. And from there, you know, Raphael, who is, you know, having a rough time, like, coming to terms with who he is as a person, he kind of storms off and he goes and sees a movie. And when he's leaving the movie, he sees these two muggers attack this woman, and he stops it from happening. And then he runs into one of the coolest, most badass dudes of all time, and that's Casey Jones. Okay, who's another kind of vigilante dude that goes around and stops muggings from happening, you know, kind of puts bad guys in their place, and they have a bit of a fight, which Casey Jones wins, and Raph, like, carries a chip on his shoulder because of that, and their relationship thickens throughout the film, and it's very, very much like based on these relationships, you know, and it builds over the course of especially the first two movies. But you know, Raphael, being this hard ass, goes back, and at one point in the first, like, kind of meeting with Sam Rockwell, he loses his sai, and April, I almost said April Wine, April O'Neil takes the sai and kind of hides it, you know what I mean, like, stashes it in her pocket, and she's dealing with this, like, her boyfriend, who's like, I guess, like, you know, something to do with the TV station, and her son is just like this little radical motherfucker who's, you know, he's fooling around with this group of people called the Foot Clan. And the Foot Clan is this operation, or this group of you know, ninja assassins from Japan that have came to New York, and they're using the youth to, like, steal all kinds of stuff. And it's almost like a Treasure Island kind of thing, where they're, like, bribing them with, like, you know, we have, you know, we'll give you video games and you can skateboard, like, we have this crazy warehouse and all. And fun fact, the warehouse is located on, like, the east side of Laird Island, Sam Rockwell says later on in the film, and that's a play to the creators of the Ninja Turtles, who I forgot to pay dues to, who Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, of course, two of, like, the most creative guys on the planet, and the story behind how they came up with these guys is awesome. I highly recommend checking out some documentaries on them. But So, you know, the movie's pretty straightforward from there, but then it takes its turns where, like, April is basically chased down because she's writing all these reports about the Foot Clan. So the Foot Clan track her down and they use her as a way to find out where these turtles are hanging. And Splinter gets kidnapped in the process by the Foot Clan and run by Shredder, who's like this badass dude with like an amazing outfit and just total, you know, scumbag persona, you know, like, and he doesn't give a shit about these kids. He doesn't give a shit about the Foot Clan. He just wants them, you know, to aid in his, I guess, everlasting plans to take over, I guess you could say. And when the turtles find out that Splinter's been taken, it's just, you know, very devastating to say the least, especially for Raphael. And they end up at April O'Neil's apartment, and Raphael goes up on the roof and he's, you know, practicing his karate and his martial arts and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time he's doing this, Casey Jones, who's just like happens to be eating a slice of pizza and like listening to a radio, having a beer on his rooftop, he looks over and sees this happening because he's sitting up there with binoculars, probably looking at chicks, who knows what he's doing. But he ends up going over there and helping out. And like during all this madness, there's like so many Ninja Foot Clan assailants coming over to mess with the boys. You know, the building they're hanging out at, which is April O'Neil's like grandpa's antique store, catches on fire, all that kind of shit. They escape and they end up at this farmhouse, and Raphael is like totally, you know, useless at this time. They got him stashed in a tub because he's like in a coma essentially. And April O'Neil does a good job of like explaining the characters, and she's drawing them, and you know, like they're just developing these really cool relationships. I there's no other way I can describe it other than like, you know, they're brothers, you know, and they need their father, you know, but they like, and even there's a part when they're sitting around a campfire and they see like this apparition of Splinter, and he talks to them and like kind of reassures them, you know what I mean? Like, you guys have each other, you know, and it's very deep and like almost tear-jerking at times. I remember when I was a kid, I remember being really sad when Splinter was taken, and, you know, he's sort of pinned up against this old fence, and it's this whole ordeal. It's just it is depressing, or it is borderline tear-jerking. I'm not afraid to say that. This movie is very holds such a deep place in my heart that I can just remember being a kid and almost coming to tears and being like, wow, like that's so sad and scary, and like, you know, like they don't have their dad and all, like this whole thing, you know. And they come back full force from this old cabin that they're hanging out at, and they start kicking ass. You know, they start kicking ass, and you can pretty much tell where the film goes from there, which I'll spoil because I don't give a shit. They get Splinter back, and the end fight happens on a rooftop. So we got Splinter versus the boys, and then we got Shredder against the boys, and then Splinter comes in to kind of, you know, hammer the last nail in, so to speak. And even Sam Rockwell has like his little end moment there where he talks about the warehouse, and, you know, Casey Jones is even a son of a bitch. He like flicks this, like Splinter falls into this like trash compactor, and Casey Jones just comes along. He's like whistling like, and he like hits the button, and then it crushes him, which leads into the second film, of course. But I will honestly say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of my favorite films of the 1990s, or in general. You know, it's probably on a top 100 list for me, just because of how many times I watched it when I was a kid, how ingrained it is in my head. So highly recommend it to everybody of all ages, you know, and especially if you're into like that New York, you know, you want to see New York before the internet, there you go, you know, perfect. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody for watching. Stay tuned for more videos, trying to put out one every day of the week, and I will continue to do my best to do so. So adios.